All right, I'm here with somebody special today. Who am I here with?
Professor Paul Gautier from University of Queensland.
Professor Paul, you have quite a background. What is it, 10 years, almost a decade in indoor farming? Could you talk a little bit about your experience and your background?
Yeah, that sounds great. So I started at Princeton University. We did Princeton vertical farming project. It was one of the first vertical farming lab in the US. We were looking at sustainability for the industry. Then quickly after, I created my own startup called Care Farms in Hamilton, New Jersey. And after that, I worked for 3 years at Bowery Farming, leading the R&D team over there, mostly working on strawberries, but also other products like crispy leaves that people have maybe experienced, or mustard grain as well. That was coming out of my team. And more recently, in 2022, I moved to University of Queensland, where we're doing work on cacao and vanilla and ginger, and all in hydroponic and without soil. So that's what I do.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Now, I was always really jealous about what you were doing over at Bowery because it seems like you were just kind of had unlimited possibilities to try anything. So strawberries was really the crop. Now, how many cultivars of strawberries did you go through when you were kind of screening varieties for what worked best for the indoor farm?
Yeah, so I think during my time when I was there, I think we screened up to 32 different cultivars to land on four. So we were using four cultivars for our two different kind of berries that we were selling at um, Italy in New York. And yeah, so we had four cultivars, basically two for each category. So yeah, that was very nice.
Excellent. And how did you select the varieties? Was it bricks? Was it yield? Was it the ability to get the young plants in? Or could you describe how you landed there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely limited in what I can say about it. But the biggest problem for strawberries indoor is mostly powdery mildew, and that's really what determine the some of the selections that we had. Like the ones that have less susceptibility to powdery mildew, because in indoor system, you just recirculate the air. It's high humidity, so powdery mildew love it. And so that was one of the selection. But then the other thing was yield. Yield is about profitability, and profitability is important. And so yield was really what we tested the plant for. And some plants were doing much better than we thought they would. And some cultivars that we were told were growing really great in hydroponic were actually not growing so well in our system. So it was really, it's system dependent, but that's really what we were looking for: yield, and finally was the taste. I think the taste was extremely important for us. Bricks was not so important, but we wanted our customer to have really a different experience with strawberries, like something that Americans would have never tested, and that's really what we were targeting. So we selected two cultivars that was very similar in terms of the taste. And they were really like, we call it the wild one, wild of the taste. The taste was really wild, not because it was close to the wild species, but more that, for the taste. So that's what we had, yeah.
Awesome. Now, you're in Australia now, and Australia is very much landlocked, and you're leading up vertical farming. Is vertical farming popular in Australia?
So vertical farming is not very popular in Australia because in Australia we have first a very small population, 25 million on the island, which is very, very big. And our strategy usually is, well, if we need more food, we just take more land. That's the traditional aspect. However, over the past few years, there's been a massive issue regarding extreme weather. We just had a massive storm that was the first time since 1967 that we had a cyclone crossing Brisbane. And it flooded many areas, and we had also cyclones in the north of Queensland. So we have a lot of different extreme weather crossing the country. And one of the very special aspects of Australia is that farmers are private companies. And the biggest problem is when you have a storm passing by, most of these private companies that sells their fresh produce, if their farm was on the path of the extreme weather, usually they can't sell the produce. And so they have 2 years to recover, and if they don't, usually they sell the land. And we have seen it more and more acceleration of that in Australia, which is a problem because even so we are not a big population, we still need to feed it. So that's one of the aspects that really is attracting for vertical farming. The other aspect is Australia, because it's a very big country. We need to ship some of the fruit and vegetables to some areas where you can't really grow, like Darwin, which is tropical and dry or hot and in different location. We also have like a lot of town in the middle of the country where we don't necessarily grow the food, and that could take days. And so for fresh produce, it's very, very complicated and very difficult. So that's kind of what is attracting for vertical farming. And finally, one very particular aspect of Australia for vertical farming is every single system that exists today could find a possibility, an application in Australia. So, we think of container farms or even massive farms. Some companies are doing that. Like every single kind of system can work in Australia because of the very particular market and environment that we have. So yeah, that's the interesting part.
Okay. And infrastructure, water, electricity is all readily available in these parts, or is that a little bit harder to find, or are people looking at off-grid solutions, solar panels, things like that for on-grid? Could you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, so Australia is interesting. We are a big country, dry for most of it, but water is mostly readily available depending where you are. Okay. And so in some area, like in northern Queensland, like outside of Brisbane, we have a valley called the Lockyer Valley. And in the Lockyer Valley, we have the water quality is not really great. So it's difficult, it's usually very hard water, so it's difficult to grow anything. So the farmers have been really looking into getting better water. For vertical farm or even greenhouse, sometimes it could be difficult. So that's some areas. It depends really where you are. So that's the water part. And of course, if you are in the middle of the country where water is limited, so it's a little bit harder. So that's definitely one aspect. In some of the energy in Australia is still fossil fuel energies. We have a lot of uranium in Australia, but we don't use it. So we don't have nuclear or other power. And there have been, of course, a lot of development of renewable energy, but in some areas, the grid doesn't really can hold too much of this energy. But however, there is something interesting in Australia, which some people are looking into. We have talked, like some company in the UK and other part of the world are talking about farm as a battery. And in Australia, you have actually some time of the day where the price of energy is actually negative. So they pay you to consume, mostly because we have old plants for producing energy, and then you can't turn them off. Coal and others, you can't really turn them off. So that's kind of like some benefit of Australia. So yes, the energy part and the water part is very interesting.
Okay, excellent. That's I didn't even know that. That's a good takeaway. That's exciting. So if you could maybe offer one piece of advice for somebody who is looking to start a farm in Australia, what would that be?
I think is know the market first. That's kind of the advice we can give to anyone starting a new farm. But I think is know the market and know the locals. Australia is a very interesting country, but it's still the relationship is very important. As Australian will tell you, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And so when someone wants to build a business in Australia and eventually, do vertical farm or other things, it's about the people and how you could make your business profitable. So, but yeah, there's a ton of opportunity at the moment, and we don't have to forget that Asia is not very far away from us, and Australia has the possibility to become the ball of Asia. So that's another thing where there's a lot of things to be changed. Of course, policy is important because we have a high level of quarantine. So when you build a business, everything have to be considered, like what kind of species are we going to grow, what kind of cultivar, do I have the cultivar in Australia, do you have the seeds in Australia? All of that is kind of important to take into account.
Yeah. Now, do you miss being in the United States?
The US is a different environment. It's very, very interesting. So Australia is different, but the US is a very dynamic place, and there's a lot of going on. So it was a pleasure to be at the conference, and yeah,
Awesome. Speaking of the conference, how has it been? Any big takeaways from your time here? Any learnings, new products that you saw that the listeners might find interesting?
Yeah, I think there is some interesting technologies that are coming up. I mean, the one that we have seen around, like Skytree, differently, and others. There's Sea Line was there as well with drums. There's a lot of very interesting things going on. I saw also a very interesting vertical farm called Ag-Eye, I think. So that was interesting. Now it's a question of seeing them in application, but yeah, I think it was that was very interesting. Some of the debate were interesting as well. There were a really nice presentation from some of the big companies. We're still missing, I think, a lot of debates about where the state of the industry really is and what can we learn from the mistake of others, and are we ready to learn from it? Yeah. But I thought it was, it's an interesting conference, but I'm sure the next one will be even better. So yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Do you have any other shows planned for this year that you plan to attend?
Yeah, so I'm going to be in Bangkok for Agent AI. I think AI is a big thing at the moment, and so yeah, I will be there in Bangkok in I think it's 6 weeks from now. Looking for the conversation about AI and how we could use AI, leverage AI to accelerate our knowledge and learning from the indoor farming.
I'm going to ask one last question. Thank you for your time. This has been great. Always neat to get insights from other parts of the world. Where do you see AI assisting a farm the most? Because I know you guys dealt with a lot of data and a lot of different systems across the board, and just curious where you think the most applicable use is, and maybe today and then in 10 years.
Yeah. So I think AI is evolving very, very fast. Today we could use AI to manage the environment very, very well. It's not a problem. Many companies are doing it, managing temperature, humidity. The things that we are not ready yet is really to link that to the plant. So there is some way that we can link to the plant, but really understanding how the plant physiology change in function of the environment that we grow them with. We are very far from it, mostly because it's a lot of work to really understand the metabolism of the plant, the way the plant's going to react. And I'm saying that not that people are not trying and have a model, it's just because it's really a very deep plant science effort to get to that stage, and that's really where AI is missing at the moment, and there is a lot of people trying to do that, but we still need to do it. So that's kind of like where AI is heading to. Are we going to replace a farmer with AI? No, because like maybe in the long term, maybe in 10 or 15 years, right? When we have trained the AI long enough, but right now we're definitely not ready, mostly because farmers don't really know what they know. They know a lot, but they don't really know what they know, and they can't really communicate to you. They just know, yeah, that's the way it is. I've been doing it for 40 years, and it works. Yeah. And you can't tell to AI, yeah, I've been doing it for 40 years, and it works, and deal with it. So I think that's where we need to improve a lot in the AI, but we are definitely heading into that direction. And AI right now are kind of an assistant for the farmer, really helping them making better decision eventually, and also informing them of why they're making decision based on data. And I really think that's a really powerful aspect of AI that we have at the moment.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time. I won't take any more. We got some good sessions heading up here on LED light recipes that I'll be taking a part of. Hope you can join. But safe travels, and we'll see you around.
All right.
Thank you.